Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. I am Allison Johnston, Professional Development Coordinator for the Maryland Department of Health's Developmental Disabilities Administration. We welcome you to today's webinar titled Upcoming DDA Eligibility Webinar for Coordinators of Community Services. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak, and we will call on you. Today's presentation is available in the handout section of the webinar panel and may be printed. Now I'd like to introduce our Director of Federal Programs, Rhonda Workman, to begin today's meeting. Good afternoon, Rhonda.
Good afternoon, Allison. Thank you so much. On behalf of the Developmental Disabilities Administration, I want to welcome everyone here today joining us for the training for Coordinators of Community Services. In order to receive funding under a DDA-operated Medicaid waiver program, individuals must complete a two-application process. This includes the DDA eligibility application process and the DDA-operated Medicaid waiver application process. Today, we will be reviewing the DDA eligibility application process. We are coordinating with Coordination of Community Services leadership for another training date that we will specifically be talking about the DDA-operated Medicaid waiver application process. It is important for all coordinators of community services to attend the webinar or view the recorded webinars. And in order to in addition to reviewing existing standards and requirements today and in our next webinar, we will also be sharing some new updates with you. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this is our agenda for today. As I mentioned, we will be focusing on the DDA eligibility application process. We'll begin with a short overview. We will talk about the application submission process. We'll then go into interview and comprehensive assessments and the processes and steps related to that. We'll talk about the DDA's review of the application and comprehensive assessment and our eligibility determination. We will review priority category assessments and share some new updates. And we'll also review reconsiderations before opening up for questions and answers. So as we're moving forward, please be sure to stay muted. Raise your hand if you have questions that we will take at the end of the presentation. So feel free to jot some notes related to that. And we look forward to having this time with you today to talk about DDA eligibility applications. I'm going to now turn it over to Amma to share an overview. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Rhonda. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amma, and I'm the Division Chief of Eligibility here at DDA. Next slide, please. In order to receive funding under a DDA-operated Medicaid waiver program, individuals must complete a two-application process, the DDA eligibility application process and the DDA-operated Medicaid waiver application process. Today, we will be focusing on the DDA eligibility process. We will conduct another training specifically on the DDA-operated Medicaid waiver application process. Next slide, please. Per Maryland's requirement, to be eligible to receive services from the Developmental Disabilities Administration, the person must have a disability which keeps them from meeting their daily activities independently and meet specific criteria. In order for DDA to determine whether a person is eligible, the person or someone acting on their behalf must complete the DDA application process. Next slide, please. This image is a high-level overview of the DDA eligibility process. The first step is the submission of the application, then the completion of the comprehensive assessment to the eligibility determination. All these steps should be completed in 60 business days. Next slide, please. Next slide. We're going to talk about the application submission process. The eligibility intake process starts when an application is sent into the DDA regional office. The application can be submitted by the person who's applying, their authorized representative, or someone else who cares about the person with the individual and/or their legal representative's consent. After receiving the application, the DDA regional office will create a client profile in LTSS Maryland if one does not already exist. They will then scan and upload the application into the person's record in LTSS Maryland within one business day. Next slide, please. Within 7 calendar days of getting the application, the DDA regional office eligibility staff must send the applicant a letter, which we also refer to as an acknowledgement letter, to confirm that the application was received. They will then assign the applicant in LTSS Maryland to a coordination of community services provider. Once the assignment is made, the coordination of community services provider will get an alert that a new person has been referred. The coordination of community services provider will then assign a specific coordinator of community services. The coordinator of community services has 45 business days from the date that the agency was assigned to complete and submit the comprehensive assessment. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to kick this over to Linda Yill, the Regional Deputy Director for the Western Maryland Regional Office.
Good afternoon. We're going to talk about the interview and comprehensive assessment. Next slide, please. After being assigned a coordinator of community service, the coordinator community service must, within 7 calendar days, contact the applicant or their family to schedule a face-to-face interview. Note, this meeting must be in person. The comprehensive assessment is then completed in LTSS. The coordinator of community services has 45 business days from the date the agency is assigned to complete and submit the comprehensive assessment. Next slide, please. An in-person interview is required for all applicants. There is an exception that can be approved via email by the DDA if the person lives in a chronic hospital or rehab facility or a residential school. The CCS must complete the interview even if it looks like the person may not qualify for services based on their application. Next slide, please. What happens in the interview? The coordinator of community service will meet with the applicant and their legal guardian, family, caregiver, or authorized representative. And there may be other members of the family or team or people that know the individual well there to also be part of the interview process. They'll review and complete the comprehensive assessment. Next slide, please. So during the comprehensive assessment, they'll gather all of the evaluations, medical, psychological, school reports, anything that shows the person's disability and needs. They'll help the family to gather any missing evaluations, if anything is needed, or if there's anything that's incomplete. They share information about other community resources that may help meet the person's needs. Please note that the coordinator of community service should have written consent before going to another entity to request documentation. Next slide, please. During the interview, the coordinator of community service must confirm if the applicant has applied for medical assistance or other alternative funding before the initiation of services. These actions are required as part of the Code of Maryland Regulations 1022-1208. If medical assistance has not been applied for, then you can assist the individual and their family to apply for that. At the age of 18, Social Security income should be applied for, and the CCS can also assist the family with that step as well. Next slide, please. To ensure accurate eligibility determinations, all comprehensive assessments must include complete and relevant documentation. We need a required psychological assessment that has cognitive testing and adaptive testing. The supporting documentation for the diagnosis, such as autism spectrum disorder or other developmental disabilities, must be supported by formal assessments like the ones shown here. These tests are required to determine if the applicant meets the Maryland Developmental Disabilities eligibility criteria. It's important to note that the physician or caregiver self-report alone are not enough documentation. Next slide, please. Community resources. It's important for the coordinator of community services to document any of the applicant's current services, such as infants and toddlers, the Division of Rehab Services, the autism waiver, the rare and expensive case management, the community first choice, or other supports in the community that the individual or family may be using. Next slide, please. It's also very important for the CCS, the coordinator of community service, to educate the applicant and the families about why the documentation is needed. For example, you could talk about how the DDA needs these professional assessments to confirm the medical eligibility that's required for the waiver program. Provide clear instructions on how the individual can obtain these evaluations or assessments. Next slide, please. Or if they need assistance, you can assist them with gathering the documentation. You can contact the schools, the medical providers, other agencies directly requesting copies of assessments for the participant or their family. Please note that it's very important that you obtain written consent from the applicant or guardian using the release of information form prior to contacting these entities. Next slide, please. The coordinators of community service should inform people about other available options in the community, such as infants and toddlers, DOORS, Maryland's home and community-based waiver services, rare and expensive case management, community first choice, and other local supports such as churches and nonprofit organizations that may help fill some of the needs that an individual or family might have. Next slide, please. Coordinators of community service should explain what happens next. They'll talk about how DDA will notify the applicant in writing once an eligibility determination has been made. The notification will include information about appeals and reconsiderations. And if approved, the individual will receive the choice letter, which notifies them that they have 30 days to select a coordinator of community services. Being that the comprehensive assessment is the contact that you're going to make with the family, You may want to talk to them about how they're going to have a choice to choose you and your agency or another agency after the eligibility determination. Next slide, please. It's important to note that being found eligible for DDA services does not guarantee funding. Services will not start until the waiver enrollment is approved. The Medicaid waiver application is a separate process that happens based on waiver capacity and funding. Next slide, please. After the interview, the coordinator of community services must upload all of the completed information into LTSS Maryland under the documentation section of the comprehensive assessment, as shown in the picture on this slide. Next slide, please. The DDA regional office eligibility staff then review the application, the comprehensive assessment, the supporting documents in LTSS Maryland to make the final eligibility decision. Next slide, please. It is important to note that the coordinator of community services makes an eligibility determination recommendation to the regional office. The coordinator of community services should not provide the applicant with the preliminary eligibility determination, but can explain that the applicant and family will get DDA's determination in a formal letter that will be received in the mail. Next slide, please. Extensions can be granted in the event a comprehensive assessment cannot be submitted timely or by the due date. So the regional office will review the extension request, and the request can be approved if the applicant or caregiver or other representative cancels the appointment and it cannot be rescheduled due to timely request. You can also request an extension if the requested documentation has not been received by the applicant or other resources. Next slide, please. Applicants can choose to withdraw their application at any time if they decide they no longer want to pursue DDA funded services. An application may also be considered abandoned if the applicant or their representative cannot be reached for the interview. If this happens, the coordinator of community services must document at least 3 attempts to contact the applicant before the 45-day deadline, including at least 1 attempt by certified mail. The coordinator of community services should make every effort to contact the applicant and their representatives before reaching out to the regional office and letting them know that they could not reach them. Next slide, please. I'm going to let Alma go on and talk about the next part, which is reviewing the eligibility determination.
Thank you, Linda. Under Maryland's regulation, DDA eligibility staff must make a recommendation to the regional office director within 60 business days after receiving a completed application. This recommendation covers whether the applicant is eligible. In situations where DDA is unable to make a decision based on information provided, DDA may request for a consultant review. Note that no action is needed from the coordinator of community services. The regional office then sends a letter to the applicant explaining the eligibility decision and informing them of their right to a hearing or to formally appeal the decision. Next slide, please. Developmentally disabled eligibility means that the person has a physical or mental impairment, but not just mental illness, or it can be a combination of mental and physical impairment. It will probably continue forever. It started before the person turned 22. The person needs supports or assistance to live independently, and the individual needs the support of a team to help them with services and treatment. Supports only eligibility means that the person has a physical or mental impairment, but not just mental illness, or it can be a combination of both mental and physical impairment, and it will probably continue forever. Next slide, please.
Before we go to the next slide, just to make sure we're all on the same page as we're talking about the DDA eligibility determination. These are the two eligibility categories for the Developmental Disabilities Administration that's noted in regulations. So we have two eligibility categories. A person, when they apply, will be determined either developmentally disabled, as Amma just shared, based on these standards that are noted in regulations, or they could be found to be supports only eligible. I would also just add that if the individual does not meet either the developmentally disabled eligibility, sometimes referred to as DD eligibility, or does not meet the supports only eligibility, sometimes referred to as SO eligible, they would then be found not eligible. And so the letter will either tell them they're DD eligible, supports only eligible, or not eligible. And these standards are noted within DDA's regulation. Thank you, Amma.
Thank you, Rhonda, for clarification. Next slide, please. This slide shows an overview of DDA's eligibility determination based on the documentation that is received. The developmentally disabled means that based on the documentation that was provided, the applicant has met all of the 5 of Maryland's developmental disability criteria. And so DDA then adds this person to the waiting list in the appropriate priority category, which will be discussed further on in this presentation. Supports only eligibility means that based on the documentation provided, the applicant has met some, but not all, of Maryland's developmentally disabled criteria. The applicant may submit new documentation with a request for reconsideration to be reviewed by the regional office. Not eligible means that based on the documentation that was provided, the applicant does not meet Maryland's developmentally disabled criteria. The applicant may submit new documentation with a request for reconsideration for this as well. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now we're going to talk about priority category assessments. The Code of Maryland Regulation COMAR 1022-1207 priority categories criteria is used to decide how urgent a person's needs are once they have been found eligible for DDA services, either in the developmentally disabled or supports only category. The DDA waiting list is organized into categories based on urgency of need, length of time, and special circumstances. For urgency of need, how quickly the person needs services. Length of time, how long the person has been in the priority category. And for special circumstances, certain circumstances that may qualify someone for special funding stream or allocation outside the usual order, for example, a transitioning youth. Next slide, please. A person's priority on the waiting list can change if their situation or their caregiver's situation changes. It is important that individuals on the waiting list or their representatives tell the coordinator of community services or the DDA regional office about any changes in addresses or personal circumstances. Next slide, please. We're going to talk about the waiting list crisis resolution. This category is for individuals in an immediate or impending emergency that needs urgent help. Examples include being homeless or at risk of homelessness within 30 days, being a victim of abuse or neglect, being at serious risk of harming themselves or others, living with a caregiver who cannot provide proper care due to health problems. Requests for upgrades to crisis resolution should include documentation that aligns with the criteria for crisis resolution. Next slide, please. Crisis prevention. This category is for individuals whose situations are worsening and could lead to crisis within a year, or individuals who have older caregivers. Examples include individuals identified by DDA as having an urgent need for services, individuals at substantial risk of meeting crisis resolution criteria within a year, or individuals supported by a caregiver who is 65 years or older. Please note that a caregiver's age alone is not enough to determine urgency. Staff also consider whether a crisis is likely within a year. Next slide, please. Now we're going to talk about the current request category. This category is for people who need DDA services now, but are not at risk of crisis. This includes individuals who need services now and would accept them if they are offered, individuals who need services in the next 3 years that will increase their need for services. Example, leaving school, a caregiver retiring, or aging out of a school program or school residential placement. Please note that this category is not for people who simply want to be on the list for long-term planning without an immediate or near future need. Next slide, please. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Future Needs Registry. The DDA keeps a Future Needs Registry for people who are eligible for DDA services, either in the developmental disability or supports only category, but don't need services within the next 3 years. Being on the Future Needs Registry means that the person has a future needs status. This registry is separate from the DDA waiting list and helps with long-term planning. Individuals or their authorized representatives are responsible for informing the DDA regional offices about any changes in service need. Next slide, please. A person on the Future Needs Registry may be placed on the waiting list and assigned a priority category, such as current request, crisis prevention, or crisis resolution if they turn 18 or become a transition TY eligible. When a person turns 18, they're 3 years from their TY year. And so this will be a good time for us to move them from the Future Needs Registry to the waiting list. Or if the person or their representative provide information showing a current or emergent need. Next slide, please. Here is some new updates that will be coming up soon. Coordinators of community services and regional office eligibility staff will have the ability to indicate interest in self-direction on the priority category assessment form. Selecting self-direction on a priority category assessment form will create a flag on the DDA waiting list so that these individuals who are interested in self-direction can be easily identified. The flag will allow DDA staff to easily identify individuals who may need to complete the new training requirement for self-direction, and this will be discussed in our next webinar. Next slide, please. Now here is a summary of the DDA eligibility process. Here we have three groups here, the red representing the applicant, the black representing the coordinator of community services, and the yellow representing the DDA regional office. The first one is the applicant. So the applicant contacts DDA or submits an eligibility application. The regional office then receives and logs the application into LTSS Maryland. The DDA regional office will then assign and notify the coordination of community service provider. The CCS, or the coordinator of community services, will contact the applicant and or their authorized representative. During this time, the applicant will also collect and gather supporting documentation. The CCS will perform the in-person or face-to-face interview and complete the comprehensive assessment as well as the priority category assessment. The CCS will then gather and submit all relevant information and submit it in LTSS Maryland. The DDA regional office will receive and review the eligibility application. If a consultant review is needed, the regional office will make a consultant review referral. The DDA will then make a final eligibility determination and notify the applicant of the decision. Next slide, please. We're going to talk a little bit about reconsiderations. The request for reconsideration form is attached to the final determination letter. Reconsiderations do not require a new application. Applicants can send in or should send in new information related to their application directly to the regional office. Applicants will receive a new determination letter when a decision has been made. Please note that no action is needed from the coordinator of community services for reconsideration because an eligibility determination has already been made. Depending on the decision from the DDA, the person may not have an assigned CCS to assist them in completing the reconsideration request. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn this back over to Linda.
Next slide, please. Some important reminders. The DDA accepts applications at any age and at any time in the person's lifespan. Becoming eligible for services does not mean that an individual will automatically be enrolled in the DDA waiver program. It does mean that when funding is available, the DDA can offer the person with the greatest need the opportunity to apply for the DDA waiver program. Coordinators of community services will be notified to help the person complete the waiver application process. So that's why it's really important that if you are working with an individual and their priority category changes, you update the regional office through the priority category forms so that they are in the accurate place on the waiting list and can be offered the opportunity in the correct order. Next slide, please. I'm going to now turn this back over to Rhonda Workman, who is going to then do some questions and answers.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Amma. So today, again, we focused on the DDA eligibility application process. And so we talked about individuals or their representatives, family members can submit an application to DDA. The DDA then will assign a coordination of community services provider who will complete that comprehensive assessment. We talked about our DDA determination, and for which an individual then would receive a letter to let them know their eligibility category. We shared that we have 2 eligibility categories, developmentally disabled and supports only. And in that letter that we send to individuals, it will let them know if we found them to be developmentally disabled, supports only eligible, or not eligible. If we found them to be developmentally disabled or supports only eligible, we'll also provide in the letter their priority category. AMA shared with us the different priority categories to include crisis resolution, crisis prevention, and current request. And with the letters, individuals will receive both their appeal rights and the opportunity to request a reconsideration that we talked about today. We also shared that there will be an upcoming enhancement to the priority category assessment, that we will indicate whether an individual is interested in self-direction so that we can then look to support them in the waiver amendment requirement for training related to self-direction. We also talked about there are situations where individuals may initially apply, but then may be no longer interested, or that we may, or you may not be able to contact them. And we talked about those applications being abandoned. And then we also talked about the Future Needs Registry, which is a list of individuals who are not needing services today, but may need services in 3 or more years. So now I'm going to go through the questions. So feel free to put questions in the chat box. And if you'd like, you can also raise your hand and we'll call on you. So we'll go through the questions that we received initially, and then happy to open up the mic for those who would like to ask a question over the air. So our first question is, can a list of required documentation needed to determine eligibility be formalized? It's inconsistent at times which assessments are accepted. So Amma, do you want to share your thoughts about whether we can put together a list of assessments that would be helpful for making determinations?
Yes, we will work internally and provide something on the DDA website.
Great, thank you, Emma. And the thing about the assessments, we're really, the most helpful assessments are assessments that can tell us both functional and adaptive skills, so that we can then look at those to determine whether individuals meet the 5 criteria for developmentally disabled, or just the 2 criteria for supports only, or if they don't meet any of the criteria. Our next question is, you mentioned confirm if the applicant has applied for medical assistance or other alternative funding. What alternative funding other than medical assistance is available as of 2025? It was my understanding that no new state funded plans would be initiated. Linda, do you want to share some thoughts about that? And then Amma and I could add to it.
So you have to think globally on this. We're not talking about just DDA funding. We're talking about other funding that may be available in the community. There are grants and loans that folks could access to purchase a piece of equipment that they may need, for example. And as for state funding, that's specifically from DDA. So what we were asking about or talking about in that slide really was all of those other resources and things that are available in their community.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. And the requirement for individuals to have applied for medical assistance or other alternative funding is actually in DDA regulations in COMAR 1022-12. Linda, the next question is, what happens if the family does not provide an accurate or current address?
So you can reach out to them if they have a phone number or an email address to then find out if you can get an address for them. If they don't update their addresses, then they may miss out on very important mail that comes from not only DDA, but other Medicaid providers that use LTSS as the system of record.
Thank you, Linda. Our next question is, does the supports only designation qualify individuals for any types of services? Linda, you have any thoughts on that one?
So at this point in time, supports only does not have any funding attached to it. We have had some legislation that came through several years ago that specifically targeted individuals that were supports only. And so really it just depends on the budget each year and what comes out of the budget discussions from Maryland.
Thank you. Linda, here's another question for you. Why would someone be placed or determined supports only eligible if their comprehensive assessment outlined needed support for a team and independence?
It's very possible that even though they have described all of that in their comprehensive assessment, that we don't have the needed medical documentation to back up that determination.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing I would add is, remember, developmentally disabled, you have to meet 5 criteria. Did the disability occur prior to the age of 22? So individuals could have a disability after that age, so they're not considered developmentally disabled, but still need support for a team and independence. So we have to look at all 5 criteria. And so that's where that supporting documentation that Linda was talking about is so critical. So the more information that the family and the applicant can provide, the more information we have in order to make an informed determination. Here's a question for you. Can you share approximately how many people are on the DDA waiting list? And this would be for people that are developmentally disabled.
Yes, as of yesterday, I believe there are about 3,800 individuals on the waiting list.
Thank you, Alma. And the thing about the waiting list that we know is we know that nationally, states do not have awareness of all individuals that may be in need of services. So even though we have 3,800 individuals on our waiting list, we know that there are several others that are in need of services that may be unknown to us, that may become to our attention in crisis or other situations. And so remember, as we shared today, that individuals can apply at any age, and we support the lifespan of individuals. So we definitely want to be of assistance for anybody that may be interested in our services so we can determine eligibility. The next question is, who did the coordinators of community services contact for the approval for interview exception for face-to-face assessment? Linda, can you share a little bit about the exception for the in-person?
Yeah, you would reach out to the regional office eligibility team, and they would put you in touch with the lead person that needs to be able to give you that exception.
Yeah, and Linda shared today a few examples, like someone's in a residential school. Some people attend residential schools that are out of the state. They could be in a chronic hospital. And so in situations where it may not be as easy to access or to get to those situations, those are situations where we would take under consideration for the exception. And those 3 examples were noted on that slide. Our next question is Social Security income a requirement for a DDA waiver? So I'm going to start with you. Do you want to talk about why it's important to apply for Social Security income at age 18?
Yes. So applying for Social Security income at age 18 will help during the waiver application process. In instances where a person does not have Social Security, they may be referred to the SRT, which is the state review team, that will then prolong the time to process that waiver application.
Right. So for Medicaid waiver programs, part of the financial eligibility is the person has to have been determined disabled. And a developmentally disabled category for DDA does not meet the federal requirements. So there needs to be a federal determination related to that. And so when individuals turn 18, they can apply for medical assistance, well, at any age, but at age 18, they can apply for Social Security income. And when that determination is made and they're determined eligible, that automatically gives them the federal disability determination and prevents the requirement for Maryland to have the individual go through the Maryland State Review Team process to then determine them federal based on the federal standards. Linda, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that you hit the main point on the head. If they have the Social Security income established prior to applying for the waiver, that then does not cause them to go to the state review team, which can be a long process.
And then in addition, right, we would want to support individuals to access community resources and supports. DDA is one of many services, and so people should be looking and applying for medical assistance. People should be looking and applying for Social Security income. That will help them with income. The medical assistance will help them with health insurance. So those are things that are very important for all individuals, whether they're on the waiting list or in the waiver program, to be able to have access to those additional resources and supports to support their needs and their life goals. Our next question is, what services are offered under the supports only eligibility? Linda, do you want to talk about, DD eligibility and how that relates a little bit to the waiver versus supports only?
Yeah, so to be eligible for our waiver services, you must be DD eligible.
No.
The DD eligibility allows you then to apply for waiver services. So any of the funding that is for folks that are supports only has to be state only funding. And like I said, there was at one point an initiative to fund some of those folks at a low level to provide them some supports, hoping that would then allow them to be more independent and not need to continue to reach out for supports. But the main reason that we have those folks that are supports only on our list is because they do have an identified disability and may need some supports. And again, it's based on the funding from the Maryland budget, whether we're able to fund any of those supports.
Thank you, Linda. Our next question is, once a participant is placed on the waiting list, does the Coordinator of Community Services complete a priority category assessment form to change the priority if they're going from future to current? For example, a participant turns 18 and now is in the future category. So Linda, if you could talk about the future needs registry and what happens at age 18 that the regional office does, and then also talk about any changes that a priority category assessment form should be updated.
Sure. So at the age of 18, those folks are notified by LTSS and generated, and the regional office looks at those and moves them automatically from future need to current request. At that point, if a CCS is working with somebody and finds out that there are other needs, or if there's a more immediate need, then a priority category assessment would be correct. Also, whenever a family or individual reaches out to the regional office, we may assign a CCS and ask them to meet with the family and update the priority category assessment. but the transition whenever they turn 18 is automatically done at the regional office. If anybody is missed at that age and you are aware of them, you can always reach out to the regional office so we can update that.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Absolutely right. The system will tracks, and when people turn 18 that are on the future needs registry, the regional office gets the alert, and then they can review that and move them into the current request priority category. Our next question, would it be possible to translate certain information, such as list of assessments needed for eligibility determination, and other languages, such as Spanish? It would be useful for those families who English is not a native language, with the coordinator of community services has not entered the process yet. Great suggestion. We will definitely look into that. We're looking at translation opportunities for a lot of our documents, so thank you for sharing that suggestion. Our next question, if the applicant refuses to meet with the coordinator of community services in person, but would like the coordinator of community services to submit the comprehensive assessment based on a phone conversation and available assessments, can the coordinator of community services submit, or would that be considered an abandoned application? Linda, do you have any thoughts on that one?
That's definitely an interesting scenario. I would think that you'd want to reach out to your regional office so that they can help assist you in walking through that and deciding whether that should be an abandoned process or whether they would be able to do a phone interview.
Yeah, and let's kind of think a little bit and talk a little bit about why a face-to-face assessment is important. Because that coordinator of community services is developing that initial rapport with the individual, gathering information, but also there's an opportunity to kind of assess in the interview how things are going. What's the environment like, right? Is this person maybe in a crisis situation? So it really provides another opportunity for information that can help to inform the comprehensive assessment and be shared with the DDA. Linda, anything else you want to add to that about the importance of the face-to-face?
I just think that the face-to-face interview is very, very important. It also introduces more folks into their circle and helps them to understand that there's lots more people out there that can support the family and the individual as they have needs. And if you run into any of those situations, make sure you reach out to your regional office. We have some assistance that we can provide in helping you to break down some of those barriers. Lots of folks are afraid of having lots of different people in their homes. So reach out to us and we can help you through those situations.
Thank you, Linda. We had a suggestion to consider an exception to the in-person interview if an individuals are incarcerated. So thank you for sharing that. We'll take that back and consider. The next question is, how does the process of a comprehensive assessment change with transitioning youth? Linda, you want to share a little bit about transitioning youth and comprehensive assessments?
Sure. So transitioning youth is a category of eligibility that is based on somebody aging out of the school system. So it's between that 21st and 22nd birthday. And most of those folks have been eligible to apply for the waiver just based on that transitioning category. The comprehensive assessment would be needed if they need residential services, and we would need to have that information, what qualifies them for the residential services. But also if there's an urgent need of some kind, we would at the regional office want to know that. So you would do a comprehensive assessment at that time.
Right, and most, transitioning youth are known to us before their transitioning year. So they've applied previously, so the initial comprehensive assessment is already completed. If something's changed, you definitely can reach out to the regional office. You can do an updated priority category assessment to let us know what's going on with the individual. Maybe a new assessment came through, et cetera. But But if something's changed, we definitely want to know. And that's why we always say it's important for all individuals to keep us up to date with their contact information and to reach out to us or their coordinator of community services if their situation changes. Next question. What if we do get an updated address and LTSS doesn't accept it as a valid address and makes their last address as the main address? So I would say a couple things. We've been working with the LTSS team and eligibility determination teams related to making sure that the addresses are updated. And so there's some new information and processes through the authorization to participate notification that will then help to support so that the addresses get updated and are maintained. So feel free to reach out to the regions if you have questions related to that. Next question, can you explain more about what supports only is? Was it available to these participants? Would it be case management only? So I would say, in addition to what Linda said, is a couple things to keep in mind. The majority of our services and funding are through the Medicaid waiver program. Medicaid waiver programs provides an opportunity for the state to share the costs for services with the federal government. In the state of Maryland, for every dollar we spend on our waiver services, the federal government will match it by $1. So we are splitting the cost. Supports only eligibility category would not be found medically eligible to meet the medical level of care for the waiver program, and therefore we would not be able to get a match. The DDA would need 100% state general funds budgeted and allocated to us in order to provide or expand any services for people who are in the supports only eligibility category. Remember, the developmentally disabled category has 5 criteria. It's the primary reason why the Developmental Disabilities Administration exists, to support people with developmental disabilities, versus supports only eligible, which has only requires a 2 service category. So individuals that are supports only would be placed on the waiting list, but we have no funding or services that we can offer individuals that are supports only. We are able to support individuals that are developmentally disabled with Medicaid waiver programs and match and maximize our dollars with the federal match. Linda, anything additional you want to add?
Yeah, I would just like to add additionally that folks that are found supports only eligible do not get case management services.
Thank you. Next question. If the individual was not diagnosed until after age 22, but it appears likely that they should have been diagnosed while still underage, what evidence can show this? Again, we would need documentations, psychological assessments, medical documents. We will look and accept any documents that we get, but we would need evidence that would demonstrate that the disability occurred prior to the age of 22. We are not asking and encouraging CCSs not to make determinations, not to promise things to individuals and families, but to support them in gathering information so that a determination can be made. And in the event that there's challenges with documentation, you know, we have worked with individuals and families to look at alternative strategies to be able to make our determination. Linda, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. Next question. Under the assessment and interview, slide 505, it was mentioned that coordinators of community services can assist with the Social Security application. Please clarify to what extent coordinators of community services should be assisting families with the Social Security income application. So I would just say in general, whether it's Social Security income application, applying for a local respite program or other resources, that during that comprehensive assessment, you can absolutely share information with individuals and assist them in that part. But when they're on the waiting list in the different priority categories, you can absolutely assist them ongoing with referral and related activities. while they're waiting for waiver enrollment, and even after waiver enrollment. Coordinators of community services should be sharing information about local, state, and federal resources and can assist with the application process. Linda, anything you want to add to that?
No, I just think that it's really important that the community coordinators of community service understand that we want individuals to have full lives and be fully integrated into their community, and that they shouldn't just have a service life, which is only DDA services. And so there are a lot of other supports and community resources that folks can be part of.
Great. Our next question is a spouse's income counted when initial waiver application or redetermination is being assessed? Do you want to share a little bit about what you know related to spouse's income?
I believe the spouse's income does not count. However, DDA does not make financial eligibility decisions. And so the eligibility determination division will have to review those documents to make that decision.
Yeah. And so in general, right, all individuals that apply for a DDA operated Medicaid waiver program, the applicant's finances, incomes and assets are considered. When you're talking about a spouse, there are things under Medicaid financial eligibility, such as spousal impoverishment and other things that would be considered to support the spouse because of legal arrangements. I would suggest, because this person notes they have a friend holding off on marrying a fiance, that they consult with a benefit advisor, counselor, or seek legal advice related to that. But as Amma mentioned, we do not make those type of determinations. That's done by the eligibility determination division. Next question, what is the expected timeline for the state review team to respond with a decision? So it's a great question. This process is also under the Department of Human Services. So we absolutely support timely decisions for all processes. And so the important thing about a state review team process for us and for coordinators of community services is that if it's requested that we support the individual and family in gathering the supporting documentation and responding to any request to include an interview or meeting with the state review team so that decision can be made timely. Next question. For a family that has more than one child who struggles with disabilities, is there a way to get a window open for a waiver when they do not fall under the criteria for the priority category assessment to change? Amma, do you want to share a little bit about our reserve category for multiple children on the waiting list?
Yes. So DDA has a reserved category for families with multiple children on the waiting list. We provide people the opportunity to apply based on funding and capacity. And so you can always reach out to the regional office and share this information, and we can make provisions based on funding and capacity.
Great. There's the next question relates to the annual level of care and how it relates to the comprehensive assessment. So for this question, we will hold off because that's really our second training that we're going to be doing relates to the DDA waiver application process, where we'll talk about the level of care and the comprehensive assessment. In general, I would say, as we've mentioned already, that if the person is determined developmentally disabled or DD eligible, that would meet our level of care. Supports only would not. So we'll get into more of those details at the next training. We have a question. I'm going to just go to questions that are related to the DDA application because we're starting to spill into Medicaid waiver ones. So I'm just going to keep moving to DDA specific. We had a question about LTSS updates. So absolutely share any recommendations with your leadership that can share it with us, and we're happy to explore LTSS updates. One person has a question with an address reverting back to MMIS address. Again, we have a notification process, so reach out to your regional office. We can help to support that. Question about transition youth. At what age does DDA upgrade a person from future needs to current request? Alma, what age does that happen?
Usually at 18, because they're very close to age 21, which is their TY year. So at age 18, we usually upgrade individuals from the future need to current request.
Great. The next person says that this presentation would have been helpful 8 months ago when they started. So we're glad that this information is being helpful for you now, and hope that it will be helpful for existing CCSs or coordinators of community services and new ones. And we will be providing additional information, another webinar specifically training on the DDA operated Medicaid waiver programs. Please note, we've also pushed out communication in the DDA newsletter. If you're not currently signed up for that, we'd love for you to sign up for that. We are going to be doing a series of webinars related to the DDA operated Medicaid waiver amendment. And so we've got a number of them coming up specific to self-direction, forms updates, LTSS Maryland updates, provider updates for new opportunity and services, and a few others. So we hope you're able to join us for those. That's the last question that I have in the queue. Does anybody have any additional questions or comments? You can raise your hand or add them to the comments or the questions. Linda.
Yeah, I did want to mention that folks that are supports only eligible are eligible for the LISS funding that's available on our website. That is a lottery that is available, and folks that are supports only can access that.
Great. Okay, the next question came in related to disenrollments and redeterminations, asking if the regional office requesting individuals update the priority category assessments. No, we are not asking for priority category assessments to be updated for redeterminations and disenrollments. If you have specific questions on about a specific individual, I would suggest you reach out to the regional office just to get clarity on that. It's hard to answer some of these questions without having more information. Question, low intensity support services was on hold previously. Is this back to active? The low intensity support services, just for your awareness, in case you're not aware, it is a random sampling or random selection for individuals. We have limited amount of funding for them due to the budget that was passed last year. We were able to provide one opportunity because the funding was decreased. And so I believe that process has already occurred. So be on the lookout for additional information in the future. If we have funding allocated, that we can open that up for other opportunities for low intensity support services. Other questions about the DDA eligibility and application process? Again, you can raise your hand or put it in the question box. So while you're thinking a little bit more, we'll again kind of recap what we talked about today in case that triggers something. And if we don't have any additional questions, we'll wrap up. But we talked about the DDA application process. Remember, we started and said there's a 2-application process in order to get to the waiver services. Today, we talked about the DDA application process. The coordinator of community services will complete a comprehensive assessment that's in the LTSS Maryland system. The DDA will make a determination. We will send a letter to the person. The letter will include the eligibility category that we have found the individual to meet. Remember, developmentally disabled has 5 criteria. Supports only has 2. It's really important to have supporting documentation to include assessments that can demonstrate both functional and adaptive skills to help us really make those determinations. The letter will also include the priority category, whether the individual meets the crisis resolution, crisis prevention, or current request. There is an opportunity to request a reconsideration. Form is completed or is included in the letter that we give the notice for our determination. The person of the family can complete that and submit it with new information, and we're happy to look at that. Coming soon, next month, the priority category assessment form will include a checkbox to indicate whether people are interested in the self-directed service delivery model, so we can support the waiver amendment requirement for that training. Some individuals at times may apply and then may no longer be interested in the services or unable to be reached. Those individuals and their applications would be considered abandoned. We really encourage and ask that you make every attempt you can to talk to the individual or their representatives to reach them prior to abandoning that application. 3 contacts are required as a minimum to include a certified letter. We talked about future needs category, and that at 3 years out at age 18, we'll move individuals that are not currently on the waiting list to the waiting list so that we can support them in that effort and assign a coordination of community services provider. And then the important reminders that Linda shared with us is that we accept applications at any age and at any time of the person's lifespan. And becoming eligible for services, DD eligible or supports only eligible, does not mean that an individual will automatically be enrolled in the DDA waiver program. It means that when funding is available, the DDA can offer the person with the greatest needs the opportunity to apply to the DDA waiver program or based on reserve categories, and the coordinator of community services would be notified to help the person to complete the waiver application process via LTSS Maryland Alert. And so we want to encourage you to share this information with your peers. Leadership, we would ask that you ensure that the recorded webinar is reviewed by your coordinators who were unable to join us today, and that we will be coordinating and putting out another training date where we will go over the DDA waiver application process. We had a question just come in. What happens when a person is approved for supportive housing but not ready to move and has not for 2 years? I would suggest you reach out to the regional office and let's have a conversation to see what we can do to support, to find out the why the person hasn't moved, what their current status is, and if there's any support that can be provided. Good question. Any additional questions related to the DDA application process? Thank you for your thank you. I appreciate that. Any additional questions or feedback on the presentation and information? And we appreciate your suggestions, and we'll follow up related to translation, coming up with a list of examples of supporting documents and the other suggestions you shared. Great. If you think of something later, because sometimes it happens to me later, I start to think of something, please reach out to us. The regional offices, the headquarters office, we're available to support you and assist you. If there's additional training, information, clarification that you need that would be helpful, tools, please let us know. We're happy to team up with the coordination of community services, communities of practice leadership to help to support you as coordinators of community services, as collectively we all support individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. So thank you so much for joining us today. Allison, I'll turn it back over to you to close this out.
Thank you, Rhonda. Just a reminder, the handout for today's presentation is up on the upper right-hand corner of the panel box. Please feel free to copy the register, or to print off the registry, or to print off the presentation. And that concludes today's webinar.